Lily Carter's life was just like any other ordinary girl's, until she discovered a terrifying truth about her stepfather, Daniel. A hidden notebook, names of missing people, and a dark secret no one could have ever imagined. The closer she gets to the truth, the greater the danger becomes. Footsteps in the dead of night, someone listening behind closed doors, and a man who isn't just living a lie, but hiding something deadly. When Lily decides to expose him, she unknowingly starts a deadly game, one where she must win at all costs, or be silenced forever. Where are you watching from? Write it down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because this story is just getting started. The courtroom fell into an eerie silence, not a single whisper, not a breath out of place, just the rustle of papers, the distant hum of the air conditioning, and the pounding of a nervous heart. Standing at the witness stand, her small hands gripping the wooden ledge so tightly her knuckles turned white, was Lily Carter. She was only 12, barely tall enough to see over the podium without stretching. Her pale blue dress swayed as she shifted her weight, hazel eyes darting between the judge and the man sitting across from her, the man she once called her stepfather, a man she knew was hiding something sinister. She swallowed hard, gathering the courage that had been building inside her for weeks. Then, with a voice that trembled but refused to break, she spoke. "Your Honor, I know what my stepfather did, and it's worse than anyone here can imagine." A sharp gasp broke the silence. Someone dropped a pen. A low murmur spread through the courtroom. Her mother, Rachel, sitting just behind her, went still. Her face frozen in disbelief, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly it looked like she might tear it. And Daniel Carter, the man at the defense table, the man who had built a reputation as a charming, devoted husband, leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening, his fingers lacing together in forced composure. The judge leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. "What do you mean, young lady? Be specific." Lily hesitated, her breath catching in her throat. This was it. No turning back now. Slowly, she reached into the bag resting beside her feet and pulled out a worn, battered notebook. The pages were frayed, the edges smudged with ink and time. Her hands trembled as she held it up. This has all his secrets. I found it in his study. It explains why people are missing, why they're gone." Murmurs turned into a wave of whispers. The judge slammed her gavel, demanding order. The courtroom erupted. A woman in the back gasped audibly. A reporter scrambled for his notepad, and a man in uniform leaned in, eyes narrowing. Rachel froze, her breathing uneven, her face pale as realization began to set in. But Daniel? He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't flinch. His lips pressed into a thin, unreadable line, but behind those cold, calculating eyes, Lily saw it. Fear. She took a deep breath, bracing herself, before saying the words that sent a shockwave through the courtroom. "He's not the man we think he is. He's not even Daniel Carter." The judge slammed her gavel again, harder this time. "Order! Order in the court!" The sound echoed through the room, but nothing could silence the truth that had just been spoken. Lily wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. Lily sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering the days when life felt normal, when her mother smiled more, when their house felt like home, before everything changed, before the fear set in. She could still hear the soft hum of her mother's laughter as they baked together in the kitchen, the warmth of weekend mornings when Daniel would make pancakes, flipping them high in the air just to make her laugh. He had come into their lives like a breath of fresh air, easing the pain of losing her father. At first she liked him. Her mother, Rachel, seemed happier than she had in years. Daniel had a way of making people feel at ease. His easy smile, the way he held the door open for strangers, how he always seemed to have the right words at the right time. It was hard not to trust him. But trust had a way of unraveling when you looked too closely. It started with small things. Things that seemed insignificant. Things Lily told herself were just her imagination. Daniel was always out late. Business meetings, he said. Work emergencies. But Lily noticed how his phone was always tucked away when he got home, how he never mentioned any names, never talked about the job he claimed kept him so busy. Because at the bottom of the page, under a date from just 1 week ago, was a name she never expected to see. Rachel Carter. Her mother. Lily couldn't breathe. Daniel, Nathaniel, whoever he really was, had already decided. Rachel was next. Lily sat at the dinner table, forcing herself to chew, to swallow, to breathe like nothing had changed, but everything had. The notebook, the names, her mother's name. Rachel was next. And the only person who knew the truth sat just across from her, cutting into his steak with slow, deliberate precision. Daniel's eyes flicked up. His study was always locked. It was the one room in the house she was never allowed to enter. The rule had been clear from the beginning. But one afternoon, when she had been playing in the hallway, the door had been left slightly ajar. Without thinking, she stepped inside. Papers. Stacks and stacks of papers. A desk, too neat, as if nothing was ever really used. And a strange, heavy smell in the air, cologne and something else, something stale. Then came his voice, sharp and unfamiliar. Lily. She turned, and for the first time, she saw something she had never seen before. His smile was gone. His eyes were cold. "You don't belong in here." His voice was steady, but something about it sent a chill down her spine. She muttered an apology and hurried out, her heart pounding. He didn't say anything more, just closed the door, the lock clicking into place behind him. That night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Weeks passed, but the unease didn't go away. And then, in the attic, while searching for old Christmas decorations, she found it. A photograph. It was old, the edges curling, the colors faded, but the image was clear enough. Daniel, standing in front of a building she didn't recognize, surrounded by men in suits. Their faces blurred slightly, like they didn't want to be seen. On the back, in small, hurried handwriting, was a name. Nathaniel Reeves. Lily turned the photo over again, studying Daniel's expression. It was different. Not the warm, easygoing man she knew. This face was sharp, tense, calculated. She had never heard the name before. But something about it sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just a name. It was a warning. Something about Daniel, Nathaniel, wasn't right. And she was going to find out what. Lily had never felt her heart beat so fast. The small metal key trembled in her fingers as she stood outside Daniel's locked study. She had found it taped beneath his desk earlier that evening, a place no one would think to look. But Lily had been searching, piecing together clues, following the trail of suspicion that had been growing for weeks. The lock clicked. She froze, listening for movement. The house was silent, her mother asleep upstairs, completely unaware of what Lily was about to uncover. She pushed the door open, stepping inside. The air in the room felt different, stale, almost lifeless, as if it had been holding secrets for too long. The heavy curtains were drawn shut, casting shadows along the walls. Desk stood at the center, perfectly organized, as if no one actually used it. Lily's hands shook as she pulled out the bottom drawer, rifling through documents, receipts, official-looking papers, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, she saw something strange. A loose wooden panel beneath the desk. She knelt down, prying it open with her nails. The wood gave way, revealing a hidden compartment, and inside it, a notebook. It was old, the leather cover cracked, the pages filled with neatly written names and dates. Some were underlined, others had red marks through them. A few were circled. Lily flipped through the pages, her breath coming faster. She recognized some of the names. People from town. People who had gone missing. Her fingers moved frantically, scanning down the list until one name stopped her cold. Hannah Green, her mother's old friend. Rachel had talked about Hannah so many times, how she had suddenly disappeared, how her case had never been solved. Next to Hannah's name was a single word, written in sharp, deliberate handwriting. Complete. Lily's stomach twisted. She kept reading, flipping through the pages, dread curling around her like a vice. More names, more red marks. Some had check marks next to them. Then, she turned to the last entry. Her hands went numb, her vision blurred. "You've been quiet today, Lily," he said smoothly, his voice as casual as ever. "Something on your mind?" Her fork trembled in her hand. She shook her head. "Just tired." He nodded, smiling, but something about the way he watched her made her skin crawl, like he was studying her, calculating. Rachel, completely unaware of the silent war happening at the table, reached for her glass. "She's been keeping up with school, haven't you, sweetheart?" Lily nodded, forcing a small smile. She had to act normal, had to hide the terror clawing at her chest. She wasn't ready yet. That night, after making sure Daniel was in his study, she crept into her room and pulled out her phone. She had to know more. At the library the next morning, she sat in front of the glowing computer screen, her fingers shaking as she typed in the first name from the notebook. Hannah Green, a missing persons report from 5 years ago. She typed in another name, then another. Every single one was connected to an unsolved disappearance. Some cases were labeled as runaways, others were never found, but now Lily knew the truth. Daniel had been erasing people, and Rachel was next. She pushed back from the computer, her pulse racing. She needed proof. Real proof. If she ran to the police with only a notebook, Daniel would talk his way out of it. She needed something undeniable. That's when she saw him. Across the street, past the library windows, Daniel was standing near a park entrance, speaking to a man Lily had never seen before. The conversation looked tense, quick glances over their shoulders, hushed words, a small envelope changing hands. Her stomach lurched. This was it. Lily grabbed her phone, her hands shaking as she zoomed in. The camera clicked, capturing Daniel's face, the stranger, the exchange. Her heartbeat thundered. This wasn't just a theory anymore. She had him. That night, she made up her mind. She had to warn Rachel. She had to get them out. But Daniel was already watching. And Lily knew. If she made the wrong move, she wouldn't get another chance. Lily sat on the stairs, hidden in the shadows, her breath barely escaping her lips. Down in the kitchen, her mother's voice cut through the air, sharp and laced with suspicion. "I don't understand, Daniel. Where are you really going every night?" A long pause. Daniel's tone was steady. Too steady. "I told you, Rachel. Work has been insane lately." "Work?" Rachel scoffed. "I checked with your office. They said you haven't been in all week." Silence. Lily clenched the wooden railing, every muscle in her body tensed. When Daniel finally spoke, his voice was different, cold, calculated, dangerous. "Are you spying on me?" Rachel hesitated. Lily could almost hear her mother's heartbeat. "Of course not," Rachel said, though her voice had lost some of its fire. "But you're lying to me. I can feel it." Daniel exhaled, slow and deep. "Rachel," he murmured, stepping closer, "I love you. Don't let your imagination ruin what we have." Lily peeked through the banister. Daniel was cupping Rachel's face, his fingers just a little too tight under her jaw. She held her breath. Rachel pulled away first, rubbing her temples. "I just need to know the truth, Daniel." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked away. That night, Lily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Then the floorboards outside her door creaked. Her blood ran cold. A shadow moved beneath the gap of her door. "Lily." Daniel's voice was soft. Too soft. She squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to breathe evenly, to pretend to be asleep. Silence. Then the shadow shifted. The footsteps moved away. Lily didn't sleep after that. By morning, she had a plan. She packed the notebook into her bag, grabbed her jacket, and left before Rachel or Daniel could stop her. The police station was only a few blocks away, but every step felt like she was walking through wet cement. She had proof, names, dates, everything. The police had to believe her. Inside, an officer with tired eyes barely looked up from his desk. "Can I help you, kid?" Lily placed the notebook in front of him, her voice steady. "My stepfather isn't who he says he is. He's dangerous, and I have proof." The officer flipped through the pages, frowning. "This is quite a claim," he muttered, rubbing his temple. "Are you sure you're not just—" "I know what I saw," Lily interrupted. "Just read it, please." Another officer glanced over, raising an eyebrow. "What's going on?" "She says her stepdad's some kind of criminal," the first officer muttered. Lily gritted her teeth. "I know he is. Just check the names. They're all real." The first officer sighed, flipping another page. Then his expression changed. The skepticism drained from his face, replaced by something else. Something serious. He looked at Lily again, this time with real interest. "Wait here," he said, grabbing the notebook and walking toward the back office. Lily exhaled, shaking. She did it. Then the door to the station opened. Rachel walked in, her face lined with worry. "Lily?" Lily's stomach dropped. Before she could answer, the door opened again. Daniel stepped inside. His eyes locked onto hers, his expression calm, controlled. But Lily knew. He knew what she had done. Rachel's voice was filled with concern as she hurried toward Lily, her eyes scanning the room. "Lily, what are you doing here? What's going on?" Lily opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Daniel walked in. Everything slowed. He was calm, too calm. His stride was steady, his expression unreadable. The moment his eyes locked onto Lily's, a chill ran down her spine. "Lily," he said smoothly, tilting his head just slightly. "You had us worried. You left without saying anything." Lily's hands clenched into fists. The officer at the desk cleared his throat. "Sir, we were just—" "She's been having a rough time," Daniel interrupted, offering an easy, practiced smile. "Ever since her father passed, she's had trouble adjusting. You understand?" Rachel turned to Lily, confused. "Sweetheart, what is this about?" Lily's breath came in short, rapid bursts. He was playing them, twisting the story. She could see it in the way the officer hesitated, glancing between them. She couldn't let him win. "No!" she yelled, her voice ringing through the station. "He's lying!" Heads turned. Officers nearby paused their conversations. Lily stepped forward, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. "He's not who he says he is. He's dangerous. He's hurting people." Daniel let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "Lily, I know you're upset, but this isn't the way. You're not Daniel Carter." The room went still. Rachel's face went pale. Lily turned to the nearest officer, shoving the notebook toward him. "Look inside. Look at the names, the people who went missing. I found this in his study." The officer hesitated, flipping the first few pages. His expression shifted. Then he turned another page, and another. His frown deepened. "Hey, Sarge," he called over his shoulder. "You need to see this." Daniel's smile faltered, just barely. Another officer walked over, taking the notebook, scanning through it. His face darkened. "Lily," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this?" "It's proof," Lily said, her voice stronger now. "Proof that he's a liar, that he's dangerous, that he's been hurting people for years." Daniel exhaled through his nose, his hands still resting casually in his pockets. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "She's a child. You're really going to take her word over mine?" The officer closed the notebook, gripping it tightly. "Sir, I need you to come with us for questioning." Rachel gasped. Wait, what? No, this has to be a mistake. Daniel turned to the officer, his jaw tightening. I want my lawyer. You'll have the chance to call one at the station, the officer said. For now, hands where I can see them. Daniel didn't resist, but as they led him past Lily, he finally dropped the act. For the first time, his mask cracked. He leaned in just enough for only Lily to hear. His voice was low, ice cold. This isn't over. Then he was gone. Lily stood there, her hands trembling. She should have felt relief. But deep down she knew. He meant it. Lily sat in the back seat of the police car, her hands folded in her lap, gripping her sleeves tightly. The road ahead stretched into the dark, winding through unfamiliar streets, taking them farther and farther from their home. Rachel sat beside her, staring out the window, her face pale, her lips pressed together in a tight line. Neither of them spoke. The officers had insisted on moving them immediately after Daniel's arrest. The case was too big, too dangerous. Until they had more evidence to hold him, Lily and Rachel had to stay somewhere safe. A safe house, they called it. But when they arrived, it didn't feel safe at all. The house was small, tucked at the edge of a wooded area. The officers gave them a phone with a direct line to the station and promised 24-hour surveillance. Still, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She saw it first. A black car parked across the street. It was there in the morning, still there in the afternoon, and at night, its shadowed figure lurked under the glow of a dim street lamp. Rachel noticed it too. Maybe it's just someone from the neighborhood, she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Then the notes started appearing, slipped under the door. No footprints, no sound, just words written on plain white paper, in neat, deliberate handwriting. You can run, but you can't hide. Rachel took them straight to the officers, but all they did was increase patrols. It wasn't enough. That night, Lily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her body tense. Every creak of the old wooden floor made her pulse spike. Then, she heard it. Footsteps outside, software careful, moving along the perimeter of the house. She held her breath. The lights flickered. Then, darkness swallowed the room whole. A power outage. She sat up, her chest tightening, her fingers gripping the blanket as her ears strained for movement. Then, a sound that made her blood run cold. Glass, shattering. Rachel's door flew open as she rushed into the hallway, a flashlight shaking in her hand. Lily, stay behind me. A voice echoed from outside, deep, familiar. You really thought you could hide from me, Rachel. Daniel. Rachel gasped, stepping back, her grip on Lily tightening. More footsteps, more voices. He wasn't alone. Lily's heart pounded. If they stayed, they'd be trapped. The officers weren't here. They were patrolling the perimeter, not inside the house. She had to act. She grabbed Rachel's hand and yanked her toward the back door. We have to go, Lily whispered. Rachel hesitated for only a second before nodding. The front door rattled. The lock twisted. Lily flung open the back door, and they sprinted into the night. She could hear voices behind them, shouting. The crunch of boots against the gravel driveway. She didn't stop. The police car was just down the road. She could see it. Help! She screamed, her voice piercing through the cold night air. He's here! He's here! The officers turned, their faces snapping toward her just as the first gunshot cracked through the night. Rachel collapsed beside her with a scream. Lily dropped to her knees, pulling her mother toward the ground, shielding her with her small frame. The officers rushed forward, guns drawn, voices shouting. Daniel's voice cut through the chaos, calm and mocking. You should have stayed quiet, Lily. Then, the sound of running footsteps, more shouting. Then, nothing. The night swallowed the silence whole. The officers surrounded them, one kneeling beside Rachel. She's okay, he said quickly. It grazed her arm, nothing serious. Lily let out a shaky breath, gripping Rachel's hand. but her eyes stayed on the woods. Daniel was gone. Again. The police van sped down the highway, its sirens off, the inside eerily quiet. Daniel sat in the back, his wrists cuffed to the seat, his expression unreadable. Two officers sat across from him, their hands resting near their holsters. They thought they had him. They thought it was over. It wasn't. Without warning, Daniel lunged, yanking forward with brutal force, the cuffs snapping against the metal frame. He twisted his body, slamming into the officer nearest to him, knocking him unconscious before the second could even react. The van swerved violently, tires screeched, a struggle, a gunshot. Then silence. By the time the van skidded to a stop, Daniel was gone. The moment the radio crackled with the news of his escape, Lily's stomach dropped. She was at the new safe house, pacing the living room while Rachel sat on the couch, her face pale, her arm still bandaged from the gunshot wound. The officer on the other end of the call didn't sugarcoat it. "He's on the run, and we know exactly where he's going." Lily knew too. He was coming for them. The police didn't waste time. They set up a trap, feeding Daniel false information, making it look like Lily and Rachel had been relocated to a secluded lake house. They even went as far as staging police presence in the wrong areas, knowing Daniel would be watching. They just needed him to take the bait. And he did. Just after midnight, a black SUV tore down the dirt road leading to the fake safe house. The headlights cut through the darkness, revealing only an empty cabin. No Rachel, no Lily. But it was too late for Daniel. The moment he hit the brakes, floodlights blinded him. Police cars emerged from the shadows, surrounding him in an instant. Tires screeched. Engines roared. Instead of surrendering, Daniel slammed his foot on the gas, spinning the SUV in a desperate attempt to escape. The chase was on. He sped through the back roads, weaving through trees, cutting corners too fast. But the police were everywhere. A sharp turn, a miscalculation. The SUV skidded out of control, flipping once, twice, before crashing into a ditch. Officers rushed in, weapons drawn. The windshield was shattered, smoke rising from the hood. The driver's side door creaked open, and Daniel stumbled out, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. Even now, even at the end, he smirked. "Quite the welcome party," he muttered, raising his hands as officers grabbed him, yanking his arms behind his back. As they forced him toward the squad car, his gaze found Lily. She stood beside Rachel, watching. Expression unreadable. He smiled. "You're just like me," he said softly, his voice laced with amusement. "You'll see it one day." Lily didn't flinch. She didn't react. She just watched as they dragged him away. For the first time in weeks, she breathed. Rachel pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering against her hair. "It's over, sweetheart. It's really over." Lily wanted to believe that. And maybe, for the first time, she did. A new beginning, a fresh start, one where Daniel Carter was nothing more than a nightmare, finally put to rest. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping content. What would you have done in Lily's place? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones hiding in plain sight. Stay alert, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next story.